There he is, Mr. Mike Linton.
Hey, Chris, how you doing? Thanks
I
for
am
having
good.
me.
Oh, it's our pleasure to have you here. All right. Well, today is going to be a great day. This is an open water production, and today we are talking about reinvention and reinventing yourself, sort of in the later back half of your career. We have a great guest for this. He is formerly the CMO of big companies, a CXO, I should say, because you've had a lot of different C-suite roles at places like Best Buy. And then you are now, I guess, primarily the host of CMO Confidential, the hit podcast that's all about CMOs and what they keep confidential.
Yes, the secret life of CMOs now is out there, but thank you for that.
No, it's great. Everybody should go subscribe. It's a good listen. So I'm talking today with Mike Linton. Mike, before we go and I should say my name is Chris Albrecht. I'm here as your host. But I'm going to shut up so I can hear Mr. Mike Linton give us a little bit. So today, the long story is like it's from CXO to Ohio is how it sounded in my head. But but it's about reinvention, right? Which is you were at the top of your game in sort of the traditional business sense, and then it was just like, what am I doing? I gotta get. You were in California, living it up in the Silicon Valley, all of it. And then you picked up and moved stakes back home to Ohio, where you grew up. Give us just a little bit of your background and tell us what sort of led you. Just a little bit about where you are, where you come from.
All right, I'll give you the thumbnail. What I will say is this reinvention thing. I like it most of the time, but it was very confusing to start and unclear. And I like it more now, but it wasn't easy. And so here's the thumbnail, the backstory. I grew up in Cleveland. And then I went away to college, and my first job was brand manager of Procter & Gamble. And I can do laundry better than anybody you know because I was a brand manager of a bleach brand, and I'm really good at washing it. I can't fold it, and ironing is so challenging, but I can do it. I went from there to Progressive in general management because I wanted a P&L, and then into the paper industry at James River. So at this point in my career, I know a lot about bleach, bar soap, insurance, and paper towels and toilet paper, which we would have called bath tissue, which made me extremely popular at parties to talk about all that stuff. I had a career messed up. I went to Remington as it was my first ever head of marketing job. And then I wasn't sure what I was going to do and ended up very fortunately being hired to be what became the first ever CMO of Best Buy, which I did for 8 years. And that was in the Camelot days of Best Buy, late 98 through 2006, where the company went, it grew like crazy, and it was very profitable and innovative when I was there.
Sure.
That was when we sold like 40% of the rap, rock, all music in the country.
I spent more than I helped you out there during those years for sure.
And Chris, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm cashing in that favor today. That's why you're here.
There we go. I went from there to be a GM and then a CMO at eBay. Did a startup for a little bit, and then ended up also as an 8-year CMO at Farmers. The the J.K. Simmons stuff. Redid all their websites, smashed 14 into one. Changed the logo. Had a blast at Farmers for 8 years, and then got recruited out to go be the Chief Revenue Officer of Ancestry, which I did for almost 3 years. I've been on a bunch of boards, still on one, Allworth. But then when my career, I stopped working at Ancestry, and I really wasn't sure what to do next. And that's how we get to the podcast and moving to Ohio. So I've talked enough. I'll let you ask a question and push me one way or the other.
This is all great. This is all great, right? Because all right. So here's the thing, right? We were talking about what to ask before.
Yeah.
And so I wrote up some questions and we talked about it. And my first question was, where are you as we record this and how did you get there? But unfortunately, that answer at the time when I wrote that question was you were in Ohio and you had gotten there from California. But today you just happen to be in California. So where do you reside? We'll ask it that way.
I reside in Ohio, on the west side of Cleveland. I can see Lake Erie from my house. And I am in California visiting friends, but I have picked up stakes and moved to Ohio. And I guess as part of this reinvention thing, it wasn't really Ohio versus California. It was, I thought I had to just actually change a lot of stuff or I couldn't reinvent myself from where I was. Um, and there was enough changes facing me at the time that I thought, gosh, I have to change everything or I won't actually be able to reinvent myself. I'll always be what I was. I won't be something new. And I can give you all the reasons for Ohio, but those are a lot of those are personal reasons, but I thought I can't invent myself from where I was or reinvent myself. I was already
Why did you
invented.
feel the need for reinvention? What was it at that point, right? So I think when we last left our hero, he was at Ancestry.com, right? So was it just something like, what am I doing? Or what is it? What prompted you to go like, I need to reinvent myself?
Well, look, I've been in business forever. And the reason I'm in business, I went to college to be a creative writer and I was running a newspaper, and I realized I like running the newspaper more than I even like having my own column, which was a shock to me. And I decided that's really business. That I went from undergrad straight to business school at Duke, go Blue Devils, especially in basketball. And I've done business my whole life because one, I liked getting paid and everything, but I really liked the jobs. Most of the jobs I really liked, and I loved the work. And so I was in the C-suite about 25 years. I've been on a lot of boards. I'm still on one, and but I missed the work. I missed the game, and I missed actually all that is business. And I decided I have to do something different, and that is probably a portfolio of things. But I don't want to leave the field. I just did not want to I didn't want to leave the field. And so, and for the first time, you always think, gosh, when I get to this point, I'm not going to do anything more because I don't have to. But I understand why people keep playing in all sports and everything else. It's because it's fun to play, and it's fun. I like work. And so I decided I've got to change everything or I won't be able to see the field as it has changed, like what's available to me.
Okay.
It was not like this was a blinding insight either. This was like, I was really antsy to do something and I wasn't sure what to do. And I will say, I reached out historically, like I've always done whenever I've been in a transition, like all the search firms, all my friends, lit up the network, all that other stuff. And what I found is that probably isn't going to get me to an answer that's going to work for me at this point in my career. I'm going to have to invent it and figure it out or reinvent it. And that was a journey that I will say, it's like sailing through the fog or running through the fog. There's stuff out there, but all the structure and all the things that I had always actually kind of liked about careers, whereas you have structure, you get all this feedback, everything is really clear, your next step is clear, even when it's going bad, it's clear. There was nothing. You were kind of running in the dark. And that was very very unnerving, actually, because you've come from, I've worked quite a few years, and you always kind of can see the field in the game. I couldn't see personally anything, but I was unwilling to stop playing. And I thought, I have to change pattern. I really have to change my pattern completely, because it won't, what always worked for me won't work. And part of that pattern was I felt I had to force my own hand. And that was moving out,
Right.
forced my hand.
Right. Okay. So you had connections to Ohio, right? Because you grew up there, and you were in California at the time where you're like, oh, I need to reinvent myself. I need to change things up, shake things up. What did Ohio, was it just the fact that you kind of grew up there? What did Ohio offer that California did not, right? Like, California is pretty amazing. There's lots of things in California. Not to say Ohio isn't, but I've never been, so I don't know.
Well, you have an open invite to come.
Okay. Probably not during the winter.
No, I would suggest summer, spring, fall are great. Winter, I wouldn't do it. Yeah.
Okay. So what did Ohio have? Was it just the like your history there, or is it, because when I think of, like, sure, I'm a coastal elite snob or whatever, right? Like, but I just don't know.
Of course you are.
I don't, what I don't know is, like, because Ohio just seems so far away from all the things that I am connected to and with. And so for you, obviously had a different perspective because you grew up there, but you know, I don't want to say the word like amenities, but what about Ohio attracted you aside from family?
Uh, I have a lot of family there. I have a huge amount of friends there from my time growing up and also at Progressive. And also for me, it's an easy city, Cleveland, to use. Like I
Okay.
think like it has tremendous theater.
Mhm.
It's really easy to go to the sports games if you want. It's a very usable city. The cost of living is small. I really wanted to be on the water. And so Lake Erie is right there, and I can do a lot of hobbies like kayaking and sailboat racing and all kinds of stuff. It isn't the best in the winter, but also with the cost of living, you can kind of travel anywhere you want in the winter and feel good about it. Um, and I'm not sure, for me it was that I wouldn't say everybody needs to look at Ohio, but I think for me it also was a change of pace. And I felt, if I stayed in California, almost no matter what I did, I would always look at myself. I don't know how others would look at me, but I would look at myself for what I had been versus what I could be.
Got it. Got
And
it.
and
Okay.
and when you move, you can reinvent all of that. And you also, no one actually cares when you move as much about what you were, because all your relationships are rejiggled and reformed when you move.
Got it.
And that was really important, because I didn't want to be what I was. I mean, look, I'm proud of what I was.
Sure.
But it's not like I want to be running around going, oh yeah, he was the guy that was, his whole claim to fame is aging. I wanted to do something that was new.
Got it. So, the theme of this webinar is, reinvention. What do you think is important if someone wants to start that journey, right? Like, what do you think they need to sort of, what is a good first step for someone who is in the in the need to sort of reinvent themselves?
I don't know that I'm the best at this at all. The first step for me was, first I had to run all the old traps out. Like I had to try
Okay.
and get on a bunch of boards, which I still would love to be on more boards, but I had to run through that. I had to run through do I really want to take another job like I had? And then what do I want to do? And I ran a lot of those traps, and it was unclear that anything was going to be satisfying. And then it was, all right, you want to do something. What is it? And that was tremendously unclear to me. And so I started doing a bunch of things like consulting, some speaking, a bunch of coaching. Uh, I very active on the one board I'm on, which is really fun. And then I started just dabbling in other things that might be fun. I wrote a
Yeah.
manuscript, and then this podcast thing. It's all serendipity for me, which
Yeah.
is, somebody put me on one of their podcasts, and I said, no one will watch this, really, no way. This is they put Mike's courageous decision to go to Best Buy, and I said, in retrospect, not a courageous decision. I mean, it scared me at the time, and I almost didn't take that job, which would have been crazy because I was too afraid to take that job at the time. And I put that, so we put this video out, and like 15,000 people watched it.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, if 15,000 people are going to watch it, maybe this podcasting thing will work. And I'm just going to try it because I have time and it looks like it could be fun. And that's how the whole podcast got going. And I also, the reason it's called CMO Confidential is, look, 14 of my team went on to be CMOs. And one of the things I think about the CMO job is it's the least well-structured, most poorly managed, most inconsistent job in the C-suite. And I started the podcast based on what I wish I had known
Yeah.
to do a better job. And that's how and so I just shot some crappy version of this from a kitchen table and put it out, and a lot of people watched it, way more
Yeah.
than I thought. No one calls you or tells you, God, this is great. They just kind of watch it, and you can see the views. And that was all the feedback you get, which was also really weird. But then I thought, I'm going to just keep doing this because I can. And so I guess the summary of all this is, it was unclear what to do, but walking backwards to what I had done was probably not going to work. I had to walk forward to what was maybe going to be fun to do, but it was unclear what that was.
Got
And
it.
I kind of adopted this thing of put stuff out in the universe and see what happens, and then don't fight the river. It's taking you one way. Let it take you there,
Yeah.
and don't try and swim against the current in that river, or it will frustrate the hell out of you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm wondering, yeah, I was speaking with someone else who was at P&G, and he talked about sort of how to write a memo and the learnings and how to write a memo in that.
Those were great.
And so
Yes.
I'm wondering if you put something like that together as you were sort of figuring out what your next step is, right? Like, this is my action. This is my memo to myself.
I didn't do a memo, but I did a proctor like document in my own notebook, which is what are the things I can do and how am I going to try them? So it was more like test markets to me. I looked
Yeah.
at them as proctor test markets, which is what could I do that would get me a feel for stuff I enjoy. And I had a friend help me through a lot of this, like what will it look like if it all works? And of course it hasn't all worked, but I did, and I used the proctor training a lot, which is what is the marketplace telling you? What do you think you're good at, and then how can you prove it? And by the way, I love the proctor training. I love the structure, but I also loved how Progressive didn't need all that structure at the time to win. You could invent stuff at speed, and so I'm a product of that, and obviously a lot of my jobs. But so I did a little kind of more directional strategic note to myself, and then I pushed on all those edges to see what would happen.
Okay. So you have a background in marketing. If you think about reinvention in marketing terms, right? Or rebranding, right? Which is, I mean, not the same thing, but along the same lines. What do
Yes.
you think how do you think of people reinventing themselves in like marketing terms, like, or marketing strategy?
So I think it is when I look at brands and marketing and how people think about things is you can be what you were forever. But in
Yeah.
the end, if you want to grow, you have to do something new, or keep doing what you were doing. But obviously, I wasn't doing that anymore because I wasn't in a C-suite job. And so to me, if you're going to rebrand, you are what you do. And the doing thing on the reinvention was really hard because what you want to do is always not necessarily what the marketplace is looking for, and you can't see the marketplace nearly as clearly as you could when you were sitting in a big company and you had a lot of, or even I did a startup too, where you have more data, you have more perspective, and you get a lot more feedback. The reinvention thing is you're going to build this, you're going to rebrand yourself, but everyone already knows you for what you are or were, and what you're going to be is less clear to them.
Yeah.
You have to figure that out and then figure out where you're going to be. And honestly, the podcasting, when I started this, CMO Confidential I didn't know what it was going to be. I just liked the idea.
Yeah.
And so it has morphed into a lot more than that. But if I told you I could see it was going to be here, and I didn't have any plan for that. I wrote out like maybe these 10 shows will work and we'll see what happens. And very fortunate and completely accidental, and has to do with Ohio, actually. So
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Just like, what have you learned in the process of hosting CMO Confidential, both about yourself and from the guests that you interview?
so about myself is I thought this was all going to be about the content. And if you put out good content, the world would find you. And that is not true. Two, um, the podcasting thing is it's super more fun than I thought, the actual doing of the podcast.
Yeah.
Like interviewing people and prepping for it, or if they've done a book, you read a book, or we've done a lot on AI. So you're playing around with Chat GPT-4 and all kinds of stuff to learn it. And that prep it's super helpful just from a personal interest standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I also learned is there's so much more to this than actually doing the content. There's the infrastructure, there's all the, you got to get the guests, you got to have a schedule, you got to do all kinds of stuff. And it's kind of like, thank God I have a producer, but because we split a lot of work, but that was something you didn't see coming. And the idea that great content just attracts people like moths to a flame. I don't know that we have great content, but we learned, gosh, it's a much slower build than
Yeah.
we thought. And I will say, I met my producer on my Cleveland friend's porch twice, and I didn't know what he did. He didn't know what I did. We were just talking about other stuff. And it turned out he ran an ad agency, and he watched the first podcast, the shitty one. And he said, why don't you just, I'll just come in. We'll shoot a couple podcasts at the agency and we'll see what happens. And so we went in and I shot, not knowing anything. I lined up 6 guests. We did 6 guests in a single day of podcasting, like right after, it was like January 3rd or something. So no one's in the agency. We shoot 6 and then we just release them one at a time. And it kind of worked. And then suddenly we decided we have a real thing.
And suddenly you're a podcaster.
Well, you look back at the first shows, not that I'm any good now, but I really, really sucked then. And also we didn't have any principles for shows like we do now. Like on how we're trying to actually shoot the show and what we want the audience to do. The other thing I think is what we also learned is you want to be way more, well, this is with Proctor and the other things. We're really structured about how we do this. So we always have like 5 or 6 in the bank.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be chasing a show. We don't want to be caught like trying to figure this out. And we wanted structure in the shows, and then we wanted them to be helpful to the listener.
Yeah.
And we want all the shows to have edge. No one needs to know how to write a brand brief or buy efficient search words. They need to know how to manage the board, how to manage socio-political issues, what people are really, how other C-suite levels are seeing marketing. And so we put a lot of edge into the show that way.
Well, I wonder if there were, getting back to this idea around reinvention, were there any podcasts or books or other things that you incorporated that sort of helped you on your journey of reinvention?
Yeah, I called a lot of podcasters. Well, not a lot, but 4 or 5, or people that ran a network, a podcast network, and asked, how do you even do this? And that was more helpful than actually listening to podcasts. The other advice I got, not necessarily from podcasters, but some from podcasters, which is get going. You can always think about this for really long, and there's always a lot of reasons to not do something. And it's never going to be ready. And it's never going to be like, I'll call it Proctor right, where you tested it and you knew when you put it out, it was as edgy and as you were going to be. But the thing was, get going and get it out there and then evolve it. Don't be paralyzed. And honestly, a lot of times you want to be paralyzed. And so, that advice of get going, start, and then don't, and learn from your mistakes, but don't let your mistakes stop you from doing the next thing.
Got it. All right. So actually, I guess my next question, which I think you just answered, which was, what's the best advice you received that you applied to your reinvention? And what's the best advice you give when others ask you about sort of reinventing themselves?
So I do think some of the advice for me is also like, there's a lot of angst with doing this new stuff for me, given where I came from.
Yeah.
In all my other jobs, you would get tremendous feedback. A lot of feedback, you didn't want it, but you got feedback all the time, especially if you're a CMO of a decent sized company, on how your stuff is doing and why aren't you doing this? And you get personnel reviews, the marketplace votes, you see sales, you see all kinds of stuff. In this reinvention phase, none of that happens, or it didn't happen for me. Yeah. And that caused a lot of angst, because you think, I am doing this stuff. Is it matter? Does it work? Is it helpful? And that angst, managing that angst, I don't know if angst is the right word, but that moving forward where you can't see where you're going it's really helpful.
Yeah.
And I would say that is really, really important. And also, if you're wed to your old, and I had a hard time getting off of this, if you're wed to your old structures and your old feedback, that is unhelpful. I had a aha moment halfway through the podcast, where I was biking with a friend on Saturday, and I said, are we going to bike next Saturday? And he's in the same space as me, but a lot more advanced. And he said, yeah, we'll bike next Saturday. But Mike, if we wanted to bike on Wednesday, we could. Your schedule is now yours and you can adjust it. And I thought, this is so insightful.
Yeah.
Even though it's sitting right in front of me, because I'm like, you got to get up, you got to be doing, you got to be working on this. And the other thing is, especially in the podcasting thing for CMO Confidential, the ideas of shows and when you write them and how you think about them and when you actually do all the extra work, you can do that anytime. And that was another thing. And that's the advice that I give everybody is get started. And the other advice that I would give people is do the hardest thing first.
Okay.
Because there's a whole bunch of stuff you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how you
get
are
it out of the way.
Yeah, but look, you're an exceptional like interviewer and journalist. I bet a lot of the prep work for this is not that much fun. Maybe
Yeah,
it
it depends on the thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's all this isn't about me. So,
well, yeah, but
I will say that
on you. Yeah, there's
well,
parts of the job you don't love.
Well, I will say that, you know, for me, it's all of a piece, right? Like I want the best possible outcome for this, whatever format it is. And so all of it leading up to it is just part of it, right? Whether I have to read a book or schedule something out or come up with the questions or whatever, right? Like it's all, is that going to make the show better? And so I like having a good show. And so that's to me sort of, but you're right. There are some things that I more like doing than other things. So
well, what I have found for me, if you get that hardest thing out of the way right away,
yeah,
it brings much more fun to the things you like doing than
if you are 100% correct. It's just getting me to do that.
Yeah. But I that mantra of do the hardest thing first, it frees up, for me anyways, it freed up the ability to have a lot more fun doing the stuff I liked.
Yeah.
Because you could cross off the thing you didn't want to do. I'm a list maker. Proctor makes you make lists and everything. But
yeah,
I
feel like
lists.
Proctor should be sending us a check.
I'm hopeful if they need my address or my automatic credit payment number, it's available. But I think if you have a bunch of fun stuff to do and you have this annoying thing hanging over you, if you wake up and get that hardest thing off, it frees up for me the ability to have fun and create new stuff. And it just, for me, it frees up your brain to go do stuff. I did that at work too, but a lot of times there's a lot of pressure on you when you're in a corporate job. You got to do the hardest thing that day because the company will demand it and beat you if you don't do it. Yeah. When you're on your own and reinventing and doing stuff, no one is forcing you to do that. Right. You can push this off. And I found that actually slowed the creative process or the energy that allows you to do good shows or like, go out and do consulting or look for other things. And so that do the hardest thing first, I think was super helpful.
All right. Well, listen, I couldn't be talking to the host of CMO Confidential with asking at least one marketing related question. Is there a trend going on in marketing right now that you like, that you see, that you kind of wish had been around when you were more active in it?
Yeah, well, I've loved the marketing, and the way I think of marketing is you are doing both left brain and right brain work. I think marketing is like 70% math, 30% creative, and what I really love about it is you are on the edge of where the consumer meets the company meets the technology.
Yeah.
And that is now more than ever. I think there's so much stress on marketers right now for a whole number of reasons. So I will say it's the best of times and it's the worst of times for marketing. And here's what I mean by that. I think there are so many new things coming in play. You have, if you just look at the pace of technology and the pace of things like TikTok coming into the market and the decline of things that have been around for years, particularly I'll call out linear television or advertising supported television. That is in the most rapid decline. You are
Yeah.
now at the front where you are trying to put all of these tools together in a way that makes sense to your company, to your budget, and your consumer when the pace of these things coming at you is too fast to know them.
Yeah.
No matter how good you are, the idea that you are facile with all of the data, all of the
Sure.
creative, all this, you can't do it. So you have to structure it. I think that would be super fun, but also super challenging. We did a whole show called "Is a CMO the Hardest Job in Business Today?" And I think you can make a case that it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's
so
such an amorphous thing, right? It encapsulates so many different things. And, it's on to your point, it's like, well, is the creative working? Well, the number, the creative beautiful, but the numbers say it's not working, right? Like it becomes this weird sort of alchemy. That's not like, oh, we sold this many units or we manufactured this many units, right? Like it's still it's soft in some ways.
well, what I will say is there's the edgy analytical part of marketing, and there's the long-term part of marketing where you're building infrastructure and brand power. There's way more pressure on marketers today to produce results faster.
Yeah.
And that's because you have a lot of you have a lot of investor expectations. Uh, you also have that demand of, oh my gosh, I got to pay out every cent because there's so much pressure a lot of times on earnings or private equity returns or anything else. And so you're in this space where you have to, I will call it sales overnight, brand over time, which is I have to make the numbers now. The company,
Yeah.
I don't want to be, no one should be the marketer that says, I'm so far out there, just don't bother me. I'm working on 3 years from now. That's not the marketplace of today. You have
Yeah.
to deliver today and protect tomorrow. And that's one of the reasons we do the show is CMO Confidential is designed to tell you about how you might manage that and things you really shouldn't do. Because
Yeah.
it is one of the shorter C-suite jobs in business. And a lot of that is, if you don't understand what your company is doing and you're out there just doing the marketing part, that's a bad thing for you. You should be
Yeah.
doing things that drive the business and learning how to speak financial. Honestly, I mean, that's one of the big things that I would drive into all my teams is we're not going to run around talking about marketing. No investors really care. They care about
Yeah.
earnings. They care about sales. They care about maybe retention. And
Yeah.
then everything else they care about, that's a diagnostic.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so the show is designed to help you think about that if you're in the seat or you want to get into the seat, or if you're managing the seat. So
Awesome. Well, that seems like a great place. Mike Linton is the host of CMO Confidential, which you can find in your favorite podcast player service. Look it up, CMO Confidential. Mike, thanks for chatting with us today about all about reinvention.
well, Chris, I being interviewed by you is an honor. I watched your one interview at Open Water and thought you were just fantastic. So it's great to be on the show, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, sir.